we are a week away from the start of early voting on the 17th. I want to begin with the latest polling we've seen from the University of Houston Hobby School. Shows Paxton at 38, Cornyn at 31, you at 17. When you see that latest polling, are you concerned, and what do you do to close that gap?
Well, the first thing that strikes me actually about that polling is not the primary electorate. It's actually me outperforming them in the general election in that same poll. I'm outperforming both Ken and John in that hobby poll, and that was a general election poll, not a primary electorate. The last two polls previous to that did come out actually had me in second place if it's a primary poll. And so these were public polls that were done last week, not internal. They weren't mine or anybody else's. And they had me firmly in second place, already beating John Cornyn, already making the runoff. So when I take away from that, from the poll that you just mentioned, is the fact that I'm clearly the most viable candidate on the Republican side in the general election because I'm outperforming two guys that have been around for decades, and I'm doing it already in that poll. The other polls that are just public polls, we are already performing in second place, even challenging Ken in one of them.
What does your internal polling tell you? Do you have internal polling that shows you doing a lot better?
It tells us very, very similar data that we have internally. And also, clearly it's not just internal, because just last week, Ken Paxton just launched about $1 million ad buy against me, and John Cornyn is also spending about $3 million against me as well. And so that's probably what their internals are telling them as well, that we are actually a serious threat, and that's why they're spending $4 million against me instead of Texas over the course of the next few weeks.
What do you do? We were just talking in the elevator about how actively you're campaigning. So what can voters expect in the lead up to a primary day and then obviously the start of early voting next week?
Well, that's actually been the secret to our success. We're working. I have been in a different city, in a different county, just about every single day since January the 5th. And I've been working vigorously, traveling all around the state of Texas, looking at voters in their eyes, figuring out exactly what they want, and allowing them to actually meet one of the candidates. And I'm the only one that's actually really running a real campaign throughout the entire state. We're going to be in a different city, in a different county, every single day for the next 2 weeks going up to Election Day. And just this afternoon, I'm getting ready to leave here and head to Beaumont, then give a speech in Baytown, and tomorrow I'm going to be in Waco, and the next thing I'm going to be in Corpus Christi. That is the operational tempo that we're going to maintain to the end of this thing, and that's actually been a secret to our success.
What does it tell you about your opponents, the fact they're not doing that?
You know, when you're around for 24 years, and the first time that John Cornyn got elected to public office, I was 11 months old, eventually you forget that you actually have to go run a campaign. You actually have to go get out and go meet people and go meet the voter. There's a reason why 75% of the electorate, the primary electorate here in Texas, does not want John Cornyn. And that's because eventually you start spending too much time up in D.C. You start bringing D.C. to Texas, not Texas to D.C. The primary voter has recognized that. And instead of getting ahead of that, he's still just going to throw money up on TV, light it on fire, but not actually run a campaign. And again, what we've realized is that the more people see us, the more people hear about my background, my military background, born and raised here in Texas, West Point graduate, military family, brother, sister, and I all went to West Point. I'm willing to bleed and die for this country. And the more people hear that voice, I think the more people are trending in our direction. That's why we're doing so well.
Let's talk a little bit about policy. In this primary, are there policy differences between you, Ken Paxton, and Senator Cornyn?
There are massive policy differences. I mean, catastrophic for John Cornyn. The reason why he's in this position in the first place is because a couple of years back, he co-sponsored gun control legislation with Colin Allred and was praised for it by Joe Biden in the Rose Garden. And he was booed off the stage at the Texas convention. That's where this whole thing started. You cannot be from Texas and co-author red flag laws in the state of Texas. That's just not how that's going to work. That's where we begin to see the break in the dam and the idea of a career politician in D.C. losing his finger on the pulse when it comes to what the base actually wants. You also cannot co-author a bill that allowed 50,000 Afghans into this country without being properly vetted. The other thing is, this is a Trump state. He just won Texas by 15 points. I was the first person in the country to endorse President Trump on this last run. I was one of his top surrogates. Got to travel all over the country with him to ensure he became our president again. John Cornyn did not endorse him till over a year later. Those three things are the biggest differentiating factors in why we are trending in the right direction and polling in second, maybe even in first place. We'll see how this round of polling goes this week.
The one, if you watch the ads on the airwaves these last few weeks, whether it's a Paxton ad, Cornyn ad, or your ads, you almost see the word Trump more than Hunt, Cornyn, or Paxton. So it's almost a battle to see who's closest to Donald Trump, at least in this primary. So is this race about who's most MAGA, and are you most MAGA?
Well, of course I am, but let's talk about this too. John Cornyn has been asking for President Trump's endorsement for the past year, coming up on a year now. The president has not endorsed two incumbents, Republican incumbents, in the entire country. And one of them is John Cornyn. That's really kind of all you need to know. We know where Ken is with the president. I told you I was one of his top surrogates, traveled around the country with him. I was the first person in the country to endorse him. So you don't necessarily have to question my Trump bona fides because I've already proven it. The issue is that you have a 24-year incumbent that has not gotten Trump's endorsement in spite of the fact that he has said repeatedly he was going to get it. And we are now 2 weeks away from this election. And last I checked, the president has stayed out of this race. The fact that the president stayed out of this race also is what gave me a lane to get in this race. I waited 9 months to see how that was going to play out, to give the president an opportunity to figure out how he was going to handle this. When he stayed out of it, I got in.
Have you asked the president for an endorsement? And if he were to give one, whichever way he goes, do you think it would be game-changing in this primary?
So the one thing I have a rule, I never discuss my conversation that I have with the White House or with the President of the United States of America. Here's what I will say. It is my job to earn the vote of the primary voter here in Texas and to earn the endorsement of President Trump. That's it. President Trump wants to pick winners, but you have to prove that you are a winner by actually going out and doing the work. And that's exactly what we are doing. Of course, I would love to have President Trump's endorsement. Obviously, anyone would in a Republican primary in the state of Texas. But at the end of the day, it's about earning the vote of the primary voter first. And given the lies that are now being told about me all over television, I've realized something, that we're clearly striking a nerve and we're clearly doing the right thing. The president has still stayed out of it, but if he got into it, I want to make sure that it's me and that we earn it.
You've been traveling the state, as we've been discussing, talking to voters in every corner of this state. I'm curious, what is the biggest issue, concern that you hear from Texas voters as you travel across Texas?
Codifying President Trump's agenda, ensuring that we actually have and maintain the border security that we have seen over the course of the past year. Come to find out, we didn't need any more new laws to fix the border. We just needed a new president. I was in El Paso a couple of weeks ago at the border, and I'm here to tell you the Border Patrol agents there were ecstatic at how safe things were and how much the border has been basically fixed. Now it's up to us to codify that for the future, because once President Trump is gone, who knows what happens? And that's one of the big reasons why I'm running for Senate. Also, people are really concerned, I hear a lot, about affordability. What I tell people all the time is a tranquilo, por favor. Wait, calm down. President Trump won because of the price of gas and the price of eggs being exorbitantly high, and that was just a canary in the coal mine for everything else. Prices are down, inflation is down, GDP is up, and gas and eggs are down. Now, is it where we want them to be? No, but he's only been the president for a year, and we're trending in the right direction. We need to continue these types of policies for the future to keep that going. And another thing that I hear is just term limits. Term limits, term limits, term limits. John Cornyn being around for 24 years is just too long. And I've already committed to doing 12 years, 2 terms, that is it. I've already term limited myself in my congressional seat to 2 terms. I got a 3-year-old boy at my house. By the time he's in high school, I want to be the father to him like my father was to me. 12 years is long enough, and our founding fathers intended us to go serve in D.C. and then leave and then come back to where you came from and make good laws up there, because someday you have to live with the laws that you made. When you are a career politician, you don't care about the laws that you make. Those are the big 3 that I keep hearing over and over again.
That last point strikes me as unusual in today's politics. Would you agree?
It's unusual, and it's unfortunate that it is unusual. You know, I have a saying, the United States Senate is not a retirement community. Where I am right now, I'm over 20 years below the average age of the Senate, which is kind of insane. If you think about the average age of a Fortune 500 company in the United States is about 58 years old. So I'm in my early to mid 40s. And the issue that I have is this: I'm giving my best years back to my country, and then I'm going to leave and pass the baton to somebody else. What we see is career politicians that do not care about the American public. They start caring about their own interest. They start caring about DC politics and not Texas politics. And that's why you have a 24-year incumbent who has now spent $85 million on this race, who was polling in the 20s. It's a complete and utter abomination. He's completely out of touch, and that's because you stayed around for too long.
In ads and in interviews, I've watched several interviews you've done preparing for today, and it seems like most of your fire is aimed, at least for the time being, at John Cornyn as opposed to Ken Paxton. Yes. Is there a reason for that in terms of differences in policy or just his age, as you've touched on quite a bit?
I want John Cornyn's job. So that's the incumbent. I'm concerned about taking his job and what I am going to do as the next senator from Texas. Obviously, Ken's running for the same thing, but he was a former attorney general running for the same job. But that's the top job, and heavy is the head that weighs the crown. That wears the crown. And so that's why my focus is on John Cornyn, the differences that we have, because he's the one that's currently in charge.
Paxton is leading polls according to public polling.
Yes.
Why are you better than Ken Paxton?
And by the way, Ken Paxton, I think for the last year has been leading in just about every single poll. This is going to head to a runoff in the top two, then go to the runoff once you finish up the primary. The biggest difference between Ken Paxton and I is Ken Paxton he's a conservative, he's a fighter, but I will also say this, he's also a career politician. And a lot of the people that I speak to are done with career politicians, and no shade at Ken, but at the end of the day, in the next few years, he's going to qualify for Social Security. And then we're having the same conversation over again. Now, if I didn't exist and that was the only true conservative that was in this party, I understand that. The issue is that I do exist. I have one of the most conservative voting records in the entire state of Texas. I've already served at the federal level. People know who I am. They know where I stand with President Trump as being the first to endorse one of his top surrogates, and 20 years younger. And I'm committing 2 terms, 12 years. So because I do exist, I think those are big differentiating factors that people are looking for. I see a lot of older people that don't balk at what I'm saying. Actually, I see a lot of heads nodding whenever I speak in front of groups of people because they're worried about their grandkids, and they're worried about their great-grandkids. I had a woman walk up to me and said, "Wesley, you are so right when it comes to this age thing. I'm 76 years old." She goes, "It's not my time anymore. It's your time. It's your kids' time. It's my grandkids' time, and I need you to protect them." That's what this whole thing is all about.
I interviewed Senator Cornyn yesterday for this piece as well, and I asked him about Paxton and his personal troubles, his also legal troubles, past legal troubles, and I asked him if that type of behavior, both personal and professional, is disqualifying for a position in the Senate. He said it is. Do you have any issues with Ken Paxton, the allegations against him, and his own personal troubles that have been well documented?
The one thing I don't do is talk about another man's personal issues. That's between he and the God that he serves. I got a ridiculous mailer sent to me from John Cornyn's team talking about a personal issue of his, and I looked at it and I said, this is pretty low rent. It's pretty disgusting. Let's talk about issues. Let's talk about policies. And the second you start going after people in their personal lives, you're not running on your own merit. You're not running on your own campaign. In fact, if you elect John Cornyn, it's more of the same. And what we have realized is that people in Texas do not want more of the same. So if you want to go after somebody's personal life, that's one thing. That's just not what I'm trying to do. Anybody that sees what I'm trying to do is I'm talking about issues, policy issues. I'm talking about term limits. I'm talking about securing our border. I'm talking about America First policies. I'm talking about why John Cornyn isn't good enough for the job and why he's not up to snuff any longer, not because it's personal, but it's because he has made some legislative decisions that doesn't jive with the primary voter. But I'm not going into the mud, and I'm not talking about people's personal lives.
If you get through this primary, you will have to face either James Tallarico or Jasmine Crockett. Just like to get your perspective on what you're seeing play out on the other side, as that race has sort of got heated and a bit on the nasty side as well.
Well, the beauty of this is I'm already again outperforming both of my counterparts in any public poll that has polled the general election against James Tallarico or Jasmine Crockett. I am prepared to take either one of them on. You are correct. It is getting pretty heated. But come one, come all, I think we are going to be very successful. Wesley Hunt will be very successful against either one of them. They're going to continue to have their battle royale, and I'm kind of watching from afar. But most importantly, and I'm not trying to be dismissive when I say this, I focus on what we're doing. I'm going to be all over the state of Texas for the next 2 weeks. You know, when I was in the military, I was not married at the time, but I told my wife now for the next 30, 60 days, honey, I am deployed. you're not going to see me, because I have to do my best to ensure that people see my face, that people of Texas know who Wesley Hunt really is. And if we do that, we're going to be just fine.
Do you prefer one or the other? There's ads out there saying that Republicans, want to see a Crockett get through that primary.
I mean, I think a Jasmine Crockett-Wesley Hunt debate in the general election would be some pay-per-view, made-for-TV type stuff. I think we don't see the world the same way, but yet we would be in very similar positions. And as somebody who is a strong conservative black Republican versus a black woman who is a liberal, and to see that healthy debate, I think that would be something that would be very interesting for Texas.
And to close, I want to ask you about two current events that have been in the news, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side. In that Democratic race, when I said things have gotten heated, I was referring to an incident about a week and a half ago where Colin Allred came out and endorsed Jasmine Crockett. Allegations that James Tallarico called, in a private conversation with a supporter of his, called Colin Allred a, quote, mediocre black man. Mm-hmm. I want you to respond to that, if you have any perspective on what that means and whether you took offense to that type of language from James Tallarico. That's one. Yeah. And then I want you to respond on something we've seen on the Republican side, which I'm sure you saw in the news. Democrats and Republicans in the Senate coming out and being quite offended at a video released by the president on Twitter depicting the Obamas as apes. So if you could respond to both issues.
Great question. So in terms of James Tallarico, should we face each other in the general election, I can assure you I'm not a mediocre black man. And if you think that way about us, you are really going to have a reckoning. If you look at my background and where I've come from, I have earned everything that I have gotten in my life. I'm somebody that, again, went to West Point along with my two siblings. I'm somebody that flew 55 combat air missions in Baghdad and an Apache helicopter pilot, something James Tallarico doesn't have the guts to ever do. I've earned 3 master's degrees in 4 years from Cornell University. And so if you want to talk about a mediocre black man, I am not the one. And I pray to God that we do end up in a debate and this question comes up. In terms of the video, I always find it very interesting. If you watch the entire video, as I did, it clearly was a mistake by a staffer. And a lot of people say, well, Wesley, you're just brushing that off. No, I'm not. It was actually legitimately a mistake by a staffer. I'm very close to the White House, actually. And then if you watch the entire video, it was actually depicting every race, religion, color, creed, all Democrats as some jungle animal that was tantamount to the Lion King. It was actually kind of a funny video. I understand how the world works today, though, however. I understand that people will take one clip, splice it, and then they will just run with it. Welcome to politics in 2026. But at the end of the day, all those things are distractions. What I know about President Trump is that he has treated my family with nothing but respect. He's been very, very kind to me and my family. He's been very, very kind to us. And at the end of the day, I can only judge somebody based on my personal experiences with them, and I will not let noise in media from the noise deter from how I feel about somebody if I know them personally.
Final question for you. This will air sometime next week during the early voting period. So people will be actually going to cast their ballots as they come across this interview and this story. What is your closing pitch to Texas voters who are undecided? And I think you mentioned this off the top of the interview. There's a good percentage of folks in Texas in that primary electorate that are still undecided.
Which is fascinating, isn't it? I think it's fascinating that you are seeing 15, 20% of the people undecided against a 24-year incumbent and against a gentleman that's been around politics, Ken Paxton, since 2004. That's fascinating, which means that there's an appetite for somebody else, and I think I am that person. I am the person that's willing to die for this country and die for every Texan, regardless of what your policy or what your politics are, because I signed an oath to defend this country against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. The other two gentlemen cannot say that. I'm the one that raised my hand and said, I will serve this country. I was the first person in the country to endorse President Trump, and I stuck with him. I have one of the most conservative voting records in all the state of Texas. And what I tell people all the time is this: you may not agree with me. You may not agree with me, but I will shoot you straight, and you will respect me, and I will respect you. And at the end of the day, that's all people want in the state of Texas. Yes, we're not going to agree 100% of the time, but I want someone that I can genuinely trust, and I will shoot you straight. And that's exactly what I want the people of Texas to know about Wesley Hunt.
Appreciate your time, Congressman.